Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Stanley Museum of Art. I'm Kimberly Datchik, the Curator of Learning and Engagement here at the museum. We're happy to welcome the Grant Wood Fellows tonight to share their work with us. The Grant Wood Art Colony provides a creative home for the next generation of artists at the University of Iowa, specifically with the School of Art and Art History and Design and Performing Arts at Iowa. The three pillars of the colony, fellowship, research, and community engagement, are all carried out adjacent to the home of Grant Wood, the one he lived in and owned while teaching at Iowa. The colony nurtures creative work and teaching in disciplines relevant to the arts and life of work at Grant Wood, including studio art, art history, and the performing arts. The program exemplifies the University of Iowa's historic commitment to creative work and pioneering of the MFA program. Tonight's program will include an introduction to all of the fellows, followed by a presentation by each one. At the conclusion of the presentations, the fellows will join me in a brief conversation about their work, and we'll conclude the evening with questions from the audience. I'm honored to introduce the 2025-26 Grant Wood Art Colony Fellows, Ada Friedman in Painting and Drawing, Kyle Marshall, Interdisciplinary Performance Dance, and Elizabeth Claire Rose, Printmaking. Our first speaker tonight will be Ada Friedman. Ada paints her dancing mind. She draws on interior and exterior research to make her paintings. In her studio routine, transparency, time, ritual, and storytelling work in tandem with oil and acrylic paint, colored pencils, pastel, papers, mylar, handwritten text, and more. Through movement, she connects the mapping of space in a painting to gesture of the body, linking drawing and painting intrinsically to performance. Friedman has had recent solo and two-person exhibitions at Kendra Jane Patrick in Bern, Switzerland, David Peter Francis in New York, and the University of Tennessee Downtown Gallery in Knoxville. Her plays or time-based paintings have been staged at in New York City at Essex Flowers, All Saints Church, and Safe Gallery. She appeared in the Diary issue, the inaugural edition of Mutt Art Review in summer of 2025, and is doing a project with Cage, a nonprofit exhibition space in Brooklyn in summer 2026. Currently, she is the founding director of Echo Arts, an artist-run residency and art performance and arts education space in Texas Hill Country. Presenting second is Kyle Marshall. Marshall is a choreographer, performer, teacher, and artistic director of Kyle Marshall Choreography, KMC, a dance company that sees the dancing body as a container of history, an igniter of social reform, and a site of celebration. Since inception in 2014, KMC has performed at venues including the Joyce Theater, Chelsea Factory, and BAM Next Wave Festival and NGPAC. Marshall has received choreographic and dance film commissions from the Philadelphia Museum of Art, Baryshnikov Art Center, Dance on the Lawn Montclair's Dance Festival, Harlem Stage, and the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum in Boston. Recognitions have included a 2018 New York Dance and Performance Juried Bessie Award, a 2020 Dance Magazine Harkness Promise Award, and a 2020 Bessie Honoree for his revival of Colored. Marshall has also received choreographic fellowships from Princeton University, Center for Ballet and the Arts at NYU, and residencies from the Monrina Foundation, Jacob's Pillow, CPR, ADF, and Bethany Arts Community. Marshall has engaged young artists through creative workshops at Pika Operation United, New York, Bloomfield College, and high schools across New Jersey. As a performer, Marshall was a member of the Trisha Brown Dance Company, Doug Elkins Choreography, etc., and Tiffany Mills Company. To close the presentation section of the evening, we'll have Elizabeth Claire Rose. Rose grew up exploring natural areas of the Midwestern United States, which cultivated her interests in ecology, biogeography, and ecological importance of varied landscapes. Rose earned her MFA in printmaking from the Tyler School of Art and Architecture at Temple University in Philadelphia and holds a BFA of Fine Art with a minor in Wilderness Studies from the University of Montana, Missoula. Rose has been a resident at Terra Nova National Park, Newfoundland and Labrador, Canada, and Mark Rothko Center in Daugavpils, Latvia, and Isle Royale National Park, Michigan, among others. She is an alumna of Fulbright, Poland, where she had a research grant in printmaking. This summer, Rose will be an artist in residence at Beaver Island, Lake Michigan, where she will create work about native plant communities. Rose maintains her own small print shop in West Michigan. Please join me in welcoming the fellows as we bring the artist talks to a start with Ada Friedman.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you all. Um, uh, this talk is a preface and 2 introductions. Intro 1, drawing my painting, living, whatever, oi, body hunch. And intro B, not thought forms anymore, but always arms out much. Preface. Good evening, everyone. Please bear with me. I will be mostly using this script. Thank you to the Grant Wood Fellowship, the School of Art and Art History and Design, and the Stanley Museum. And thank you all for coming. There's a lot of pictures in this talk. If you'd like to know dimensions or materials, you're welcome to ask at any time or interject. I'm happy to give them. This is a painting by prolific Iowan painter Paul Hine, borrowed from the Iowa City Public Library. Showing over telling. Active present is always best. It's from a research visit to see Paul Hine paintings at Mark Stevenson's home and studio earlier this week, actually. An Iowan artist and founder of Artifacts, Mark Stevenson's paintings. Mark's here tonight, actually, right here. It's pretty cool. Borrowing a painting from a public library in the middle of the country is a hopeful thing that I keep in mind right now. As the world is burning and hate is in the White House unabashed, humanity over property. And I'm aware, though, that whimsical landscape, this is the work that I have out at the library, is overdue. If you haven't borrowed a painting from the library yet, it's a wonderful resource here. Here's some more photos from my GWGS, Grant Wood Garage Studio. I'm not a fan. Can everyone hear me okay if I'm here? Okay, so I don't have to, I'm good here. All right. I'm not a fan of, nor do I want to be a voice for linear time. God knows the concept has enough vocal support. Intro A, drawing my painting living. I cut out this second part here, I guess. I prioritize showing my process in my work, as well as using every opportunity I can, or make, or take, or receive, as an active experiment in performance, in making, in connecting. It's all work, this life. I'm including here, these are flyers I made for longer talks I gave on my work. This one's from University of Knoxville in Tennessee in 2022. That started out as a much larger drawing. And this one was from Brooklyn College from their MFA program in 24. Diagrammatic, mapping, showing action and connections in mind, so on the page. I don't work alone, though I do need a lot of alone time in the studio to do my work. Cultivating a direct conversation and closeness over years with artists on another plane. Ghosts cuts at this aloneness. This approach stands in contrast to the stance made popular by Philip Guston, painter, that artists must banish the ghost from their studio. That's a modernist idea of individualism. Soon after Rosemary died in 2014, I started working with Marie Warsh on what she called the Rosemary Project. This is now called the Rosemary Mayer Estate. This involved going through Rosemary's works, making it her inventory system and website, and studying her methods through notebooks. She was a founding member of AIR, one of the first feminist artist-run spaces in New York. Really good friends with Ree Morton, Adrian Piper, somebody who was overlooked for a long time, like so many artists are. So this hands-on research has brought me very close to Rosemary, and in particular, her reenactments her works called temporary monuments that are also called ghosts. This is one that I believe was at the Renaissance Society in Chicago called October Ghost. But I helped, played a big part in making up a structure for how we could reenact these sculptures, performances, however you like to call them, working with other artists. And yeah. Marie is Rosemary's niece, and Zola is her niece. Text is texture. My studio work is currently divided into two main categories. I have performance proposal works, and then I have everyday drawings. Anything relating to a play, what I call a play, is a performance proposal. And the Pathwork play is the most recent ongoing play, and what these works are. This is a double-sided painting. As an image, you can see them both. Intro B. We're doing okay on time? We're good. Yeah. Not thought forms anymore, but always. Performance, proposal, pathwork, body of work, aka play, and more. I take wordplay seriously. This manifests in various aspects of my work, including titles for artworks, private names for specific works or their components, and designations related to my studio rules. I also subvert meanings as a shorthand studio language. For example, I refer to the painted lines, the painted linen strips or lines in performance proposal Threshold, one of these guys. In these Threshold works, I call these bones, like the red, and then underbones are the navy blue paint under there. A key role for this type of painting is to maintain consistent bones. Naming is taming. Naming makes a new world. Imagery with this parquet floor is from an exhibition that closed still last month, like December 13th, at a gallery in Switzerland, Kendra Jane Patrick. I love studio imagery, and I think studio is power, and I love being able to mesh the two. So this is, this painting. People in front of paintings. Pretty good. Different light with paintings, drawings, also important. These works are all part of my pathwork body of work. It's ongoing. This is pathwork counting days. This is performance proposal, pathwork bridge, performance proposal, pathwork counting days. I like a long title. This is a performance proposal, pathwork, wall 1 drawing. As is this one. Place, a process, working from afar, a process, place. Echo Arts is an artist-run residency and art performance and art education space in the Texas Hill Country. On land that or a small part of a bigger piece of summer camp land that my grandparents ran a summer camp on for over 60 years. That's pretty rugged, and a small part of it is becoming Echo Arts. And this is our mission is to support working artists by providing them with time, space, and a stipend to create their work. We will welcome practitioners from a wide variety of disciplines, such as music, sound, painting, drawing, film, video, writing, sculpture, beyond. I had some good shots from when we saw 5 Turner Alley, Grant Wood's studio. But they didn't make it, kind of by accident. There's a lot of pictures. But this was on a field trip I went to by myself to to Muscatine. That was a research trip, kind of. I'm really intrigued by these shapes. It's the pearl buttons, which probably everybody knows about. I sure like those shapes. They're the discarded shells. These are examples of everyday drawings. And this is the studio. This is a picture of Grant Wood, of that studio there. That's where we are. Thank you. Ended at the beginning. Do you want me to? Sure. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. How are we doing on this freezing day? Y'all are probably used to this because it's Iowa, but this is my first time here, so I'm really grateful to experience this space and be a Grant Wood Fellow this first year. Like the intro said, I'm a choreographer and a performer and dancer and director of Kyle Marshall Choreography, which is a dance company that sees the dancing body as a container of history, igniter of social reform, and a site of celebration. My work is grounded in that history and legacy of particularly Black people and the Black diaspora, but also thinking about ways that we find collaboration to create works that are pushing the cutting edge of dance making, collaboration across medium with visual art, costume, music, or often original music design, often live music performance, and video and technology as we keep going into the future. I want to start by just showing you the company. I'm going to maybe hold this a little bit. Showing you the company. I have a pointer as well. So you hear, I'm just going to quickly chat with everyone. So this is Kelly Smith, performer, Jose Lopez Rodriguez, performer. This is me. This is my husband and creative director, Ido Tastic. And this is a performer, Justin Daniels, Maz Ruprecht, who's our managing director. Cal Fish is one of our 2 sound designers we work with on a regular basis. Sid Worthy's performer, Khalid Dutson's a performer, Niara Hardister's a performer and also runs an event company and helped us do this fundraising event, which is where you see this photo. And also our stage manager, Emily Wong. And just to say that I work with a team and dance is done not by myself. I often work in the studio alone, but my work grows and gets developed by the people that help shape it. So I just wanted to name these folks as you get to see the work. So while I'm here in Iowa, I'm doing a few things. One is my company is continuing to perform, and I'm also developing new work. So I'm hoping to share both of those aspects of what I'm doing here with you today. So over this year, we have been developing and performing a Julius Eastman trilogy. Julius Eastman was a Black gay minimalist composer. He was current in New York in the 1970s and 1980s. He was contemporaries with Philip Glass, Brian Eno, Steve Reich. These are artists that you might know of. Arthur Russell, who's from Iowa, who people you might know of. Julius Eastman was among those folks, except for his work got lost towards the end of his life. He was an eccentric personality. He was a 5-octave vocalist. He was a classically trained pianist from the Curtis Institute. He worked and studied at the University of Buffalo and was a part of the Creative Associates, which was a very avant-garde music school at the time. And he bounced between upstate New York and New York City developing his work. And just to give you a sense of how he lived, he was an amalgam of many intersections. He was a multidisciplinary artist in a time where that wasn't very common. It's more common now, but not 50 years ago. He was born during the Civil Rights Movement. He came to New York during Stonewall in 1970, and he died in relative obscurity during the crack and AIDS epidemic in New York City, just to give you a span of his life. He suffered from homelessness, and a lot of his scores were lost, and as he suffered from eviction. And there's been a recent resurgence of his work in the past 10 years, and we've been really honored to be sharing the stage with some of great musicians that have been doing his work and sharing it and getting it more out there, which you'll get to see a little bit about. So in October, the company performed in London at the Barbican Centre. We had the privilege of working with AMUC, American Modern Opera Company. They're kind of a ragtag ensemble of musicians and artists that do a lot of cutting-edge opera work. And so we had the privilege of doing a full Eastman program and celebrating Eastman's work and doing our duet Gay, which is one of 3 pieces in the trilogy we're doing of his music. Gay is a duet on love. It is a narrative story, which is one of my first. It's around 30 minutes long, and it's embodied by the music called Gay Gorilla, which is by Julius Eastman, written in 1979. Want to name with the pointer. Khalid Dutton, you see up here. Costume design and makeup is also by my husband and creative director, Ido Tastic. And then naming Devon Tynes as a baritone, pianist Adam Tendler, Richard Vellucci. Not here in the photo, but you'll see in the video is Connor Haddock, who I think has an Iowa connection, and also Gigi is playing electric guitar, who's at the University of Indiana, and Seth Parker Woods, who you'll see is a cellist. And just want to name a little bit of Eastman and how he thought about his work and the subversiveness of how he interacted with minimalism, which was, maybe they thought it was apolitical, but as a person that navigated the world he did, he couldn't exist without the politics and identity that he moved through and he was seen through. So just to quote him, he said in 1980 at Northwestern University, talking about the title of his pieces, which was maybe the more controversial parts of his work, were the titles of his work. So he says, now, the reason I use Gay Gorilla, G-U-R-R-I-L-L-A, that one, is because these names, let me put it a little subsystem here, these names, either I glorify them or they glorify me. And in the case of Gorilla, the glorifies gay, and to say, there aren't many gay gorillas. So I feel that gaydom does have the strengths, so therefore, I use the word in hopes that they will. You see, I feel that at this point, I don't feel like there are gay gorillas really much that really match Afghani gorillas or PLO gorillas, but let me hope in the future that there might, you see. That's why I use the word gay gorilla as a means, as someone who, in any case, sacrifices his life to a point of view. So it's interesting to think of him sitting in this like mostly music-based, space, but also asking certain questions and kind of developing his work and in a space that is in trying to avoid meaning in a certain way. And he takes this idea of minimalism and repetition and combines it with this combination of spirit and transcendence. If you think of spiritual traditions, often they are repetitious. The rituals of going to church or genuflection in the Catholic tradition or mantra. Also thinking about dance music of the time period. Disco is incredibly repetitious. That's why some people hate it. That's why some people love it. And so thinking about that as a minimalist idea gets you at something. So I think we're going to watch a little video of part of the piece from London that we did in October. So I'm traveling back and forth a lot while I'm here, but just to share with you a little bit of the work, and I'll try and talk a little bit about some of the ideas that came to develop in the choreography of the So you see, this is that he was making work from that time period, thinking about those things. So that's gay. That's what we did in London. It's a full 30-minute piece. And the other two works, I'll pull up the volume. The other two works are Joan, which is a quartet, which is around 20 minutes with 10 cellos. And then the final piece is Feminine, which is a full 70-minute piece, full ensemble, many different instruments. And I'll show you a photo of that piece a little bit later. So while I'm here, I'm also developing some new work called Bound. Bound is thinking about the 250th anniversary of this nation. It is thinking about how words affect the body. I was really fascinated in thinking about how we founded this country. And the Declaration of Independence, if you've ever read it, is a letter. It's a letter of complaint. And I thought about how words then go on to create action, how words affect people, but also how they can create laws and create nations. And if we think about what shapes us are the rules and the laws and the words that are on pieces of paper that create certain situations and ideas. So I've been thinking a lot about how words affect us, also thinking about political speech and free speech and all these things that keep coming up in the news. I listen to the news a lot. And so thinking about subtext, thinking about gesture, subversive action, meaning and abstraction, and using text, gesture, and rhythm to talk about American values, ideals, and realities. Naming some of the performers that you see: Khalid Dutton, Kelly Smith, Sid Worthy, Justin Daniels on the floor, and Cal Fish. And then you can't see Kwame, but they're also in there. And I'm also a performer in the work. So one of the grounding texts for the piece is the Declaration of Independence, but also Frederick Douglass's "What to the Slave is the 4th of July." And if you've never heard of Frederick Douglass or listened to his words, he was a orator and a abolitionist, great writer. He was the most photographed person of his time. And he was around with Abraham Lincoln. So just think about how popular he must have been when photography was a new thing. It's like he was a meme or some sort of, viral post or something like that, with glass photography and all those things. And so I'm thinking about the text. I'm thinking about these questions. I'm thinking about what do we do now? What are we doing now? What are the next 250 years? And how can we use our words and our bodies to manifest what we want? Right? There's not a one way. There's not a one direction, and we create what we want. Right? So what's going to happen in the next 250 years? So we do this in a few different ways, and with the time I have, I'll try and share a little bit of our process. So we develop the text in many different ways. One way we do it is just by spelling out letters with our body. So I literally, one of the first days in rehearsal, I literally made a phrase that was working with each letter, A, B, C, D, E, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We also were doing a lot of improvisation. And so we use improvisation, and I asked the dancers to say words that were coming up in their body, words that were maybe responding to the current moment, words that were responding to what they're feeling today, words that were responding to what they saw as they watched their friends dance. So it wasn't necessarily political or subversive or anything like that. We then eventually used the words, and we spelled out the words with the phrase. So I'm going to show you the beginning of the alphabet, and then I'll show you one of the solos, and we'll talk a little bit about the words that we use. So this is, I call it Alpha Beta, and this is coming from a showing that we did in January, couple weeks ago. It's still January, in New York during APAP conference. So this is a recent thing. Oh. Sorry, y'all. How do I do this? Okay, here we go. Technology. So I'll show you just a little bit. Working in a very kind of didactic way of just showing you the letters. This is E, F, G H I J K L M N O P Q R S T U V W X and we could do this with elementary school kids, okay? Get them reading again. And I'm also exploring some of this material with the students here in Iowa. So they're also developing work and with these same ideas. We have a little bit, time. That's it. I'm at 15, so I got to move on. But if you have more questions, or maybe if we have time later, I can go back and show you some of the other material we're working with. But if you are curious, we are going to be kind of developing some of this work in Iowa in May. So if you want to follow the company, you definitely can. And this is a photo of Feminine, the other piece in the Julius Eastman trilogy. So thank you all.
Greetings. Can you hear me okay? Does everyone hear me? All right. You thought you were coming to an artist talk, but I'm going to talk about the last glaciation. This is a pretty interesting image of the last glacial maximum 24,000 years ago. And here you can see evidence of the glacial lobes and sublobes extending into the states. And in particular, with this magic pointer, you can see Iowa and the part of Iowa that was not glaciated and the part that was. And I'm from Illinois, so I grew up kind of at the edge of the glacial activity. And as a result of the glaciation, you have a lot of different soil deposits and silt deposits that have been spread across the country or the continent. And so here you have a map of Illinois where I'm from, and the map shows different colored blotches, and those blotches are the protected areas that were not, some of them have been plowed, and some of them have been unplowed, but mostly plowed. But Illinois is known as the prairie state, and most people think of corn and soybeans, and they don't think about the prairies and what was there and actually is there if you look hard for it. And inside those tiny colors, you might find a remnant of the prairie. And to the right, you see some topography, which was created from the glacial activity of the loess being deposited by, which is wind-blown silt, which was left behind by glaciers. And I grew up hanging out inside these tiny colored dots because I grew up going on field trips with my father, who was a field ecologist. And so my idea of where I'm from is really different than what other people think about when they think of Illinois or the Midwest. And so one of the important places I grew up was by this, it's about an hour from where I'm from, the Sand Prairie. And it's a Sand Prairie scrub oak nature area. And there you can find a lot of cacti. And so there's a lot of prickly pear, and there's western pocket gophers, and there are earth stars, which are fungi. And then you can also be there and not really see anyone, except for sometimes some migrating snow geese in the wintertime. So, and this area is completely surrounded by cornfields and soybeans. And then as you head towards the prairie, which is protected, you can see tiny remnants of the grasses trying to persist. And so I'm really interested in that persistence and the remnant of the prairie. And I've also found that it impacts my work. So this was like an early etching that I made. I would say I'm an etcher. I'm a printmaker, and I like to make detailed drawings on copper and then etch them in a bath of ferric chloride. And I like the ability to work with a matrix, because then I can make lots of variations or additions. And so these are some of the older works of mine that were kind of reflecting on the places I am familiar with. And this was a piece I made where I was doing like a reductive octwood tint and doing kind of building the plate and simultaneously sanding it down. But thinking a lot about like being at home inside a landscape. So the piece is titled Shelter. Which I think is still relevant today. Like, where do we find our home to be? And is this home flexible or static, or how do we see where we live? So here's an image of the ecosystem of the tallgrass prairie. And so as you could see, we have Iowa is connected to it, Illinois, and then a lot of other states. And a lot of the remnants of the tallgrass prairie are present in cemeteries where they were not plowed. So if you want to actually see something that was never plowed, you actually need to go to this like random small prairie cemeteries. But most people kind of don't think about the prairie as something really special. I think, like, I spent a long time living in the Rocky Mountain West, and most people, think of like the dynamic landscapes of the mountains as being more relevant or more show-stopping than, let's say, the grassland of the Midwest. And people, I do think, diminish it quite a bit. Like, I'm from the Midwest, And, I think there's a lot to see. And for me, that's one of the things I really try to highlight, is just that there are things to observe everywhere you are. And you just have to look harder. And so that's like a invitation to observe more closely. And one of the favorite grasses that I have right now is the little blue stem grass. And I've been living in Michigan for the last couple of years before coming here. And little blue stem is growing there as well, and it's a grass I'm familiar with growing up in Illinois, but it's also in Iowa. And it's a very unique grass in that its seeds kind of form a spiral formation, and in the wintertime it's still a showy plant. You can still see like a bluish purple tinge to it, so it's not boring. And in the wintertime you can enjoy it, in fact, even this time of year. So here's another prairie I basically grew up hanging out in, which is called the Revis Hill Prairie. And this is glacially deposited loess, which forms these weird-looking hills. And these formations rise right out of basically the landscape. So if you climb up onto these hills, which are quite dramatic and steep and strange, you can look out into the cornfields which are surrounding them. So it's like a little island deposit in the middle of a corn. And I always liked going there, but I always associated it with being too warm, because I was always there in the summer and it was always way too humid, and I don't like humidity. So that's why, partly why I ended up going to Montana. And then there I hung out in the mountains a lot, and especially like the high alpine areas where there's a lot of glacial activity. And there you could see similar movements actually from glaciers. So if you look carefully at the boulder field there, you could see these sort of ripple effects in the rock, and that's because of the way the glacier basically pushed the rocks into these moraine shapes. So if you compare those images, you can see some sort of evidence of the way the glacier moved and carved the prairie, and then also deposited the prairie, but also how it deposited these rocks. So these things are really interesting to me, and I'm like always attracted to reading landscape and seeing it as like a moving thing, not such a finished product. And maybe more recently in the last not so recently, maybe 5 or more years, I've been interested in glacial erratics, which are essentially gigantic boulders that were deposited by glaciers and sometimes carried hundreds or thousands of miles away and then left, just like sculptures in your garden. And sometimes they can be really precariously positioned. And so I've always found that so interesting, especially in like the high mountain areas. You go trekking up there like 10 or 11,000 feet and you'll see like a car-sized boulder dangling sort of like on the edge, but it's stable, and yet it seems fragile and like freshly put there. So that's something that I'm always kind of attracted to, is like observing how the places we're in are not final and they're moving. And I like to try to capture that in my work. And so I also work in photography, and so I like to illuminate these different features at night. And sometimes it's quite trying, even in summertime, because it can be very cold and drain your batteries, and you need to warm up. But kind of segueing, so in the Rocky Mountains, or any mountain really, you can find a whole bunch of different climate zones. And these maps, this is like an example, Alexander von Humboldt, who was an explorer and sort of an early geographer too, he created these highly detailed maps, drawings that depicted like different sort of slices of cross sections of mountains, showing the different types of landscape that you would be climbing through. So like in the valley, you could have, a more temperate experience, and then as you hike up into elevation, you could experience a completely different world. And I found that for myself, even my own experience doing a lot of backcountry treks, that you could find one plant that's flowering, and as you continue your hike, you'll find it fruiting. So you can, if you are very savvy, you'll know, okay, next week this is going to be available to eat at this one elevation. And so you so learning to kind of read the way the plants are, I think there's a lot to look at, and that's, again, something that I'm always thinking of. But also, with the elevation changes, you have different climates, and of course, the rocks and mountains are composed of different types of minerals and deposits, and then they also help form different climates or soil quality. So this was a piece I created from a bunch of different printmaking matrices. So I like to make, again, working with the multiple, I like to create several different kinds of matrices and then print them and then dissect them. So thinking kind of about how to, not always to make the plate a print, but thinking of it as a more elastic way to create. So how can you expand it, and how can you add to it and dissect it, and like kind of experience maybe what it's like to be a glacier yourself, like churning rocks, that's so that's something that I have thought about a lot. And then also like working with remnants of scraps in my studio. I'll often make additions of something I've made, but then sometimes I like to just keep those scraps around, and I'll do using the printmakers in here will know shinkoe, just taking these tiny little fragments of prints and then reassembling them and then reinserting them into something else. So I like to I have a whole process with that type of work, and a lot of my work also has to do with the different locations that I've done different residencies at. So like this one was after a residency I completed at the Mount St. Helens National Monument, also known as Lubit. And there, hanging out with the volcanic activity is kind of hard to ignore ash every day. So I'm just thinking a lot about landscape, but also how things are always in flux, even if they seem permanent. And then along those lines, this is a latitudinal line that I was thinking about. So I like to think about the way, like, for example, let's say 45 degrees north. It's like an arbitrary line that's drawn across the world. And a lot of people are maybe, let's say, in that location, but don't really think about, oh, I'm at 45 degrees north, you know. Nobody maybe thinks about this. But maybe somebody does. And the thing is that there's a lot of different climates that happen along that one line. So I like to think about how people are connected to each other without maybe even realizing it. It's like we're all sharing this funny location. And then there's also a lot of different experiences you could have on that line. So you could be having, you know, nightfall, you could have a heat wave, you could also be freezing or in a desert. So these are a series of monoprints and also editioned prints that are made from etching mostly, but also printed in relief and then chincollated to the wall. And I like to kind of, again, create the matrices, but then print them differently. So sometimes I will try to create a totally different edition from the same printed, or the same engraved matrix. So this is a close-up of one called Storm Over the River, and I was thinking about like a frozen river in Canada specifically, but thinking about just a lot of ice and movement over land, and then storm. And then thinking about like mapping. This was a piece I created after I did a residency at Terra Nova National Park in Newfoundland and Labrador. And I just kept stumbling upon this purple pitchard plant, which is a carnivorous plant. And it was present in Newfoundland and also present in Michigan and also in New Jersey. And I kept bumping into this plant because I like hanging out in bogs, okay? But I kept bumping into this, and I was so amazed by the prolific nature of this plant. And then I was reading more about it and how it really has a lot to do, of course, with the soils, but then it also has to do with glaciation and the distribution of the soils. So that's really interesting to me, and also how fragile it is, and it requires this type of habitat. So thinking a lot about like what's present in a place and training yourself to see those kind of details. And this is another piece kind of like formulated from a lot of different plates that I created. And this was a series I created. So the piece on the right is a mezzotint that I created after the Newfoundland residency, but I was thinking a lot about islands and ice and sort of disappearing landforms and then isolated landforms, etc. And so I was going to make an edition of it, and then I was doing the chincollated thing process where I was going to use a different piece of paper, and actually it failed. And I thought, oh, and suddenly the failure became the thing I was most excited about. And then it sort of spurred me on to create a whole series of these prints with different processes, but thinking about how especially me, I like to go back to certain places and see how they've changed over time. And then also, I think a lot of people have places they like to return to, and how do our impressions of the place change with our time on Earth, and how do they change based on other people's interactions with those places, etc. So this one was a similar type of print. So I was doing like mezzotint, intaglio stuff, and then I moved into like photolitho, but thinking also about color in terms of temperature. And so this was also something that I started kind of messing with during this series, was like how the colors can impact your feeling of shock or comfort. And so this one was, again, like thinking of basically burning rocks. And then similar image, but like the disappearing, the ice has melted, or the island has gone, or the void is there, so thinking about lots of different things making these. And then I also like to, I mentioned that I like to do sort of these residencies that kind of, I like to propose projects for certain locations. So I did this one at the Grand Marais Art Colony up in northern Minnesota on the shoreline of Lake Superior. And there's a bunch of basalt there, and so I'm really interested in the basalt, also because it's volcanic, and like I think that's really crazy. These columns are like I'm not a geologist, but I really like it. And so anyway, so I find it fascinating that this hot rock is like what kind of forms this freezing lake. Lake Superior is a really cold lake. Most people don't enjoy swimming in it. I do, but it depends on the time of year. And so I like to go out there and actually draw, right there. So that's where it was. And then I made this after that. And then these, I've done a lot of different things with the residencies. So definitely these are not all the same year. I don't do them I don't try to do a lot the same year. But this one is at Isle Royale National Park, which is a park that's fairly close to me. I've been there maybe more than half my life, like in a lot of different summers, trekking across this little island, which is actually an archipelago. And it's an interesting place because it has like sort of a boreal forest feeling on one part of it, and then sort of transitions into more of like a eastern hardwood forest. So you kind of have this feeling of really being in like the North Woods, but then you also have the feeling of, okay, I'm still in like the leafy land of the East. And so I got the opportunity to be a resident there, which was really cool. And I made a bunch of like cyanotype work from the experience actually there. But then, and then I made this last summer for the Frogman's print portfolio. And this is thinking still about those basalt layers and then the lake, the big lake there, Lake Superior, Gitchigumi as they call it in Ojibwe. And it's just really like the Great Lakes is really important bodies of water, but I think about it a lot because I'm living there, but I also grew up hanging out and swimming inside the lake. So it's really important place. And then after the residency too, I was thinking about these carnivorous plants there, which are called butterworts, and they just grow on the shorelines of like misted areas of Lake Superior, and I think they're in other places as well, like maybe Lake Huron. But I was hanging out with those butterworts, and after the residency, because you can't really make lithographs there. But I did that, and this kind of, when I saw this print, which is a Grant Wood print, this is called Wildflowers, I really, really resonated with it because for me, I know pretty much all of those plants there, and it's like a native Iowa flora that he depicted there. And there's, this hepatica, there's the spring beauty, there's bloodwort, there's northern leopard frog. There's a lot of cool plants, and that's in Iowa, and we can all see them in the spring possibly. But I really just really resonated with that like celebration of things that are overlooked. People want to plant something exotic in their yard, and to me this is super exotic. Like, let's all go look for this, not to dig it up, but just look at it, And so since I've been in Iowa, I've been thinking more about the prairie and doing some like tests, lots of tests, and I've been thinking about this one plant in particular called the compass plant, which is in the sunflower family. And it grows in the tall grass prairie, and it's a perennial, and it can get like 10, 12 feet tall. And this is an example of its stem, or I think, no, that's the cup plant. But the compass plant, these prairie plants are super burly. I mean, if you get close to them, you will be shocked at how intense it is. They're like tough, and to be here all the time, you have to be tough. And so I've been enjoying that, being here. And I will say, like, if you don't know what a compass plant looks like, I recommend looking it up later, because I actually don't have a photo for you. And this is an etching plate that has not been etched yet, so you can't really see it super well. But the compass plant is really interesting because it also has these leaves that shift direction based on the sun. And so people will use that as a way to help navigate. And this is a plant that belongs in the tallgrass prairie. And actually, I did not really know about the compass plant even growing up where I'm from, because people got rid of it. They plowed it and it's not around. And now there's a lot of restoration efforts, which is great. And so now we can go look at these plants, and they are around Iowa, and I think it's amazing. So that's one thing I've been thinking about, and I've been making these etchings and doing a lot of like small drawings and large drawings on metal and stuff. So, and then since I've been here, I've also been, I just happened to be from this Czech and Slovak diaspora. And apparently there's this national museum in this Cedar Rapids. So I went there and was really thinking about that, my connection to those places as well and my culture. And I used to create a lot more of work based on that. And I have like a whole series of works that I made when I first lived over in Slovak Republic. And so this piece on the right is an older etching I made that's hand-colored, but it's called Village Music. And I was on a bicycle ride through eastern Slovakia with some friends, and they had these loudspeakers that during the communist era they would use for like announcements. And we were on this bike ride, and I heard like this whistle. And I thought, what's going on? And it was from the speaker. And then they started playing music. And it was like just such a wild experience. So anyway, so I made that etching after I experienced that. And then I've also been thinking a lot about immigration, and myself being who I am, descended for whom I am, And this piece is a piece from Šariš region of East Slovakia, where there's a lot of rural landscape, but they're famous for these wooden churches. And so since I've been in Iowa, I've actually been thinking about it a lot because here I am, and there's a lot of interesting things around, and this museum happens to be nearby. So anyway, so that's kind of where I'm at, and but thinking about this compass plant and the direction has been really critical. So thank you.
Okay, so we'll just relocate up here. Okay, so thank you all for sharing about your work and kind of your thinking about it, some of the previous pieces you've worked on, and some current work that you're exploring while you're here at Iowa. How has being in Iowa and at the university played into your work, or how have you found it influencing your thinking or affecting it while you've been here this last year?
Testing. We're good? Yeah, we're good. For me, it's been a restful time in a way that I think is like, I keep saying to myself, it's fortifying for a long run artist life, which is often so many things pulling, so hectic, and day job balancing. So I just have to tell myself that this time there's supposed to be a calmer level. And a little bit of sometimes a lot more of a slower pace, and that it's helping for the long run, I guess.
Okay. I think I've never been here before. So for me, there was a newness and also a contrast to where I live in New York that I find interesting. And it gives me perspective on just where we are as a people, as a country. It gives me space to think about my own self. I'm by myself a lot more than I usually am with my husband and pets and company and the city. And you're never alone in New York, really. You always hear your neighbors. So to have that space has been helpful for me to just think similarly to Ada about just what's next. What do I want? What do I need? What are some ways to find more structure to keep going, and to figure out what are the steps I need to kind of stay good and stay healthy and also make my work grow. So it's been good to kind of have that perspective while I'm here, and just more time to reflect.
Yeah, it's been nice to have space to have a complete thought and creative thought. Like, I think when you're trying to do a lot, you can do a lot of different things and then maybe become a bit fractured in your creative thinking, and just having room to let that take its course in a more like fluid way has been really nice. And having time to see what you used to make, what you think you're making, and then where you want to make or how you want to make, that's been really awesome just to be able to engage with that.
Yeah. That kind of space to explore and think and not have the kind of create pressure that you might feel elsewhere, or have all the usual kind of impulses or pressures on you in day-to-day life that you kind of are describing within the fellowship, kind of relates to some things that have been happening here as far as workshops for BFA and MFA students to think about their studio practice as research and how they gather materials, how they use resources around them, whether that's resources in the natural world or things at the library or museums or galleries. How do you kind of noodle around as part of your practice? What do you find yourselves doing or places you're drawn to while you're here?
Want me to go? I like cemeteries, so I walked around and visited the Black Angel there pretty early on. If you haven't seen her, she's pretty cool. I like art. Well, I want to spend more time with No, I guess I'm really psyched about this library painting thing and how it's led me to Paul Hine. It's led me to get to. I love having artist friends of different ages. Mark Steven. It is and there I think I find in the Texas Hill Country too, and a lot of people make things here all the time, and I really like that. And I think it's a nice way to live all the time. So I guess I feel like I see that more too, even just being downtown or going into little shops, and I don't do that too much, but I mean to, to explore more. And I guess these little the dermatologist I found was in Muscatine, so it made me go to Muscatine, but I did it on purpose, so kind of getting into these little towns and doing is interesting for research again, but I don't always know where it will lead.
I would say that I've been looking at plants. And the trees are really big here, which is nice. The campus has really got a lot of the state champion. Is that right? The state champion black walnut tree. It's from 1870s, and I saw that right away.
Really?
And it's yeah.
Dropping in the driveway.
I mean, not there, not in the driveway. No, it's on campus. Yeah, but anyway, there's a lot of huge trees, and that's
where we live.
yeah. And what else can I add? Yeah, and then also the fact that I like how this place here in Iowa City seems to have a lot of creative activity, which is really cool to see. And then what else? Let's see what we're doing. Yes, and then I just bumped into some different cool museums, which I would not have necessarily realized were there. And even seeing like Grant Wood's studio, I thought was really impactful, like how he embellished the whole place with simple methods, but intricate, precise methods. And I really found like just some of these things, like the way people inhabit places has really been interesting.
I think I was first struck because I drove here from New York, so I was first struck by the change in landscape, and I continue to drive, and like I'm really touched by the scale of the cornfields. And I know, like, you hear about Iowa and the Midwest and cornfields, but like ours, I'm so shocked by this expansiveness of it, and it's really humbling. And as a citizen of this country, I think it's underestimated what people are doing to grow food and to grow fuel. And I hear, like, even like being here and listening to the radio, I listen to the radio a lot, and to hear the conversation around agriculture is not something that I hear in New York, and it's so important. And so to hear what's important, I think just gives me an understanding of the vastness of who we are as a people. And that's really humbling and really interesting. I'm inspired by a lot of the people I'm meeting here and a lot of the students. And again, meeting people from places that I've never been to. And so there's this new information I'm kind of getting and new experiences I'm getting from people. Similar to the landscapes and visiting Coralville and the reservoir there and seeing the fossils, and also the dam that's there, and like terrified me when I was driving over. I stopped and I was like, I'm not supposed to drive over this. And then I looked at the map and it said keep going. And I said, okay. And it's just really overwhelming, and like time and space feels like it's very spread out here. Literally, like looking at fossils that are so old. It's this feeling of time and space, and landscape is vast, and it's kind of opened up my perspective. And I find that really helpful. Yeah, I think that, all the little record shop that's downtown is great, and some of like the smaller shops are really wonderful. But just having the time to myself to think and process, I think has just been really, I don't think you can underestimate that, especially as an artist. And so that's been really, really great to experience.
And I'll ask you one last question before we open it up to the audience. But with everything happening right now, it's a really heavy time, and it can be just really hard to kind of get out of bed sometimes. What is bringing you joy in your practice right now?
Yeah, I think just doing it. It is hard to get out of bed. And I think being in the space where people also continue to show up, especially because dance is such a social form, and so you're meeting people where they are, and also you're benefiting from their energy. I always feel better after class, right? I feel better after I'm teaching. I feel better after I'm in the studio. And so the other people help me. Seeing the sunrise helps, and like taking that moment to kind of see it, or as I'm waking up. Cooking has given me a lot of pleasure recently. I've been eating at home a lot, and like it's been like a thing been trying to do since I've been here. And so cooking for myself and meeting these folks has been wonderful. Our little meetups are great. I look forward to them. It's small things, but I think they go a long way. It goes a long way.
Yeah, I agree that showing up and getting out of bed, even though it's cold, it's been really good to be in a community of creative people and like just seeing what other people make and interacting in the classroom with my students, and then also just in the whole university has been really cool. Just like I think there's a lot of openness to collaboration, and there's a lot that can happen with that, and then taking walks. For me, I've been walking in this weather a lot and looking at all the eagles, which have stunned me. I mean, I don't think anywhere I've lived I've ever seen this many eagles congregating, which is really something not to take for granted, actually. So that's been cool, even in the cold. And just developing, continuing like my journaling and drawing practice of observing and reminding myself of things that give me life or creative energy. That's really important to factor in to every day.
I very much relate to what these guys are saying about seeing people and getting to work with awesome grad students, and and getting to be a part of the university community here. And I think I get a ton of joy actually coming back to my studio. It's really exciting to me to see how my work changes when I'm not there, and then get to see it with fresh eyes or whatever you call it, but just getting to go back and seeing my work and knowing that it's there for me is really wonderful.
Thank you. So our grad assistants have the microphone, so if you have questions, they will come around to you with that.
So it seems like got it. So it seems like you're quite friendly with each other. So I'm wondering how each of you have been influencing each other's practices right now.
Well, I know it's cool to meet like cool nerdy people that are like into what they're doing, and it's always really affirming on the journey of being alone in studio, doing things to like meet other people who, I mean, we really do have different ways of making, but it's pretty cool. I don't know how I feel affected, but I do. It's nice to be around these guys. And it's cool that we all live in these old funky houses. The space is pretty neat. I feel like that kind of like overhangs also in our or something. It's like the architecture has a way of looping it. Yeah. I don't know.
I think just learning about people's stories and like experiences and like hearing about your stories about like Montana and like I cannot imagine. It's just it's so cool to hear about that perspective or your experience, in the hill country and in Texas, and it's just insightful. It just gives me more perspective and insight.
Is this on? Oh, okay. I was just going to make you aware of a place called Rochester Cemetery out east of here ways, and Elizabeth, you especially had interest in foliage, and it's a very odd place because they only mow the cemetery once a year, I believe, in June. And so the spring flowers all get to flourish and spread their seeds, and then the flowers in the fall are all cut down so they don't get to prosper. And so in the spring it can be an especially gorgeous place. It's got great oak trees and bluebirds, and it's a great place.
Thank you. You said Rochester Cemetery? Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi. I wanted to ask if you felt that the fellowship was more research or practice-based, and how does the university support your research?
As artists, I think a lot of our research is making in the studio, so it is practice, which is a really cool thing that like we get to do with making our research. But I have found that the university and Mora and the fellowship, they're very supportive in introducing us to people, or doing, kind of making it seem a little smaller than, it feels big, but it also feels not so big or something. Though it takes a little time to get used to it.
Yeah, since I've been here, I've been meeting with the folks at the Office of Sustainability to create some events in April. And so just being able to meet people from other fields has also been really cool, just to get some more ideas happening. But I would say, just having the opportunity to actually physically make in the studio practice-based type work has been really good.
Yeah, I would say the university is very supportive, and just having access to studio space. Like, it sounds simple, but studio space costs $30 an hour in New York. So for me to be able to go to the studio and not have a expectation of time changes what I think about, and it changes what I can do. I feel like this work I'm working on, Bound, is very different than the work I've done before, because I have the time to think about it, and I don't have as much pressure to kind of figure things out with dancers in the room in the moment, because all that costs money. So then that's like, the space is really helpful, and then just the resources within the university, being an R1 university, is great, because it allows me to stay connected and engaged with what's going on in the field. And also I'm meeting other professors, people in other departments. I've been chatting with folks in the music department and getting to know some of those folks. And so just learning about other people's practices, and it's really insightful, and keeps me curious and keeps me learning new things, and then goes back to inform my physical practice as well.
I would just also add being around all the cool colleagues and seeing what they're making too, and like what you said, basically but just like, it's, the way ideas form, like snowball, you see like little glimmers of something, and then it kind of catches momentum. And I feel like being around, seeing what other people make is really awesome.
All right, is there one last question from the audience?
I'm on the clock, but I do want to ask a question, because I was listening. I was wondering, as an undergraduate artist who's looking forward at their career and is kind of unsure when, business, if you're like a business major, you kind of have your career and your life kind of outlined for you of how you're going to make money and how you're going to like sustain yourself. I was wondering if you had any advice for like emerging artists who are unsure of where their career is going to go, or how they're going to make money moving forward, and how they're going to find stability, especially when it comes to like there's not really a path that's outlined for artists, and if you had any advice on that.
work hard to not be cynical. And I think you learn what that means as the longer you work, like, because at first you shouldn't, it wouldn't make sense to be cynical, but it's hard, and it's wonderful, and making your work is important, and everybody's work is individual, because we're all individual and have stories and places. So I personally, I've found I've worked a lot of different art day jobs. I worked in galleries and art nonprofits, and all my 20s and up to my early 30s in New York, and worked in my studio all the time. And I recommend being in the world working, and then. I don't know. Yeah, but knowing that there's a lot of ways to be an artist too. I think that's also nice, and that community is how to sustain 100%. So creating community and being part of it.
Yeah, I would add, yes, remain encouraged, and apply to everything that you think is reasonable for yourself. So, like, you know, there's going to be those rejections and they're really annoying, but also they can be helpful, because then you've made the application and then you can recycle it and then edit it and recycle it. So, like, every rejection, okay, fine, they didn't want it this time, but just remain encouraged on that level. It can be really tough. Also, I recommend trying for Fulbright. I did a Fulbright. I definitely think anyone should always look at that, and I hope it's fine. I think it's going to be fine still, so just keep doing it. I aim for Fulbright, I really think. But when I graduated college, I also was kind of surprised, like, oh, wow, yeah, so I'm just going to have to figure this out, you know, like, and I ended up, like, getting certified to teach English as a foreign language, TEFL, and ended up, like, living abroad in different places, and that was really good. And so, like, figuring out a way to do some of the adventure that you hope for, or maybe you don't hope for it, maybe you want something else, it's fine, but, like, thinking of ways that you can do the things that you're hoping for is really good. And then also, I'd say, like, thinking about what kind of work you make and the topics that you're interested in, and then looking at, like, you know, maybe grant projects that are not necessarily in the arts, but that might partner with the arts, I think is really good to think about. So, like, what is your work about, and how can you build relationships maybe with an organization or something that you could use your abilities to help, or maybe they can employ you, or, you know. So I think those different avenues can be really useful.
I'll say first, the business person that you think knows what's going on, we are in a rapidly changing world, and every major and degree is thinking about that, or they should be. And so don't be discouraged because you think someone else's path is clear, because it's not. And I think an artist's strength is often our ability to be creative and to be flexible and to adapt, to be resourceful, to make a connection that someone else doesn't understand, to not think linearly, because we're not living in a straight and narrow world anymore. Internet is making things intersectional. We're living in a globalized world. Technology is changing everything. And so don't think that someone else has a clear path. I'll say that. And also, I think what Ada was saying about building community and, like, being a part of community is so important. Working with what you have, knowing what you have and working with it, being diligent about your practice. You got to work hard, apply to a lot. You're going to get rejected a lot. You're going to get more no's than yeses, just going to say that. So just get used to the no's and just keep going, keep applying to things. I love what you said about looking for resources that are not within your specific medium, because I think that also connects to collaboration and building bridges. And you can start to do that now. You can go to the theater production and meet some of the actors. You can go to the writer's workshop is one of the best writing workshops in the world. Like getting used to building those connections and understanding how you fit within a wider ecosystem, I think helps you understand that, one, you're not alone, and two, you have people that you can connect to or possibly do projects with. I think that's a strong strength that artists have, is like being resourceful and being creative, and people need that. People feel like they're running out of ideas about how to make things better. We need creative people to be able to give more energy in ideas, to innovate, to give encouragement. And so I would say to find those resources, to find those jobs that support your work, and to stay encouraged. I had a mentor, Diane McIntyre, tell me that it's not always the people that are the flashiest that end up having a career, but it's the people that stick with it. She's up there now, right? She's a big elder. So I think sticking with it is a big thing. And I think the people that stick with it, it's tough. You got to be tough to be in the Midwest, right? And so just taking that with you and moving that with you, I think goes a long way.
And I just wanted to add, like, making time also for your work still, carving that out and just like creating a sacred time space for yourself just to be able to do, because it can be a lot of chaotic activity trying to transition and stuff like that, but don't let that go either, just keep making, and that's, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Everything, it feels sometimes everything in life wants to take you out of studio because it never really makes sense. So prioritizing that, I think, and getting used to that and saying no and letting people know that this is what you need, and communicating, getting practice doing that is a really helpful skill, I think, for doing it. And you can do it. And you guys can go anywhere too. It's cool to explore places. Like, it's really cool to be in the Midwest. I've never been here. I'm learning all this stuff. So, it's neat. Like, I also, like, now you know us and you can reach out. Like, New York isn't that scary and weird. You're just there. It's another place. Or big cities like Chicago. Like, you can go, I think sometimes you do have to search out your people. And that takes some time.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Ada, Elizabeth, Kyle, for sharing your work and answering our questions tonight.